Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Got a new video for you guys today. First off, I just want to say thank you guys to everybody that's been supporting my Cardfight Vanguard content. My last three videos have blown up crazy, whether it was my last episode review, my Raziel deck that we were trying out the Raziel support, and then of course Vanguard Divinez, which at this point has like well over 800 views. It was crazy. But I appreciate all the support, and I'm happy to bring you guys more Cardfight Vanguard content. Today, though, we're going to be talking about episode 4 and 5 of Cardfight Vanguard Divinez. Now, this video is going to be a little bit longer because we have two full games to talk about, and there was a lot of really cool stuff that happened. So I just wanted to give you guys my opinion on it and kind of just review the card fights a little bit. So you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel. I pump out content daily, and again, I appreciate all your support. Enough of me. Let's jump into the episodes. So I got my notes here. All right. So episode 4 kicks off with Akina and his sister in the hospital. She's still sick, and she's gushing over this idol that she's a big fan of, who actually goes to Akina's school. We met her in, I believe, the first episode, but they kind of glossed over her. She didn't seem very important, but they reintroduce her to us now. Her name is Makoto Saito. I hope I said that right. And at first, she just seems like another idol. There's always an idol in Cardfight Vanguard animes, but it turns out she's an online card fighter. We actually see her playing an online version of Cardfight Vanguard against another player. And real quick, Bushiroad, if you see this, we need this. This looks cool as hell. It's a way better simulator than Deer Days, and I promise you, people would play this. Throw in a little bit of microtransaction to help get cards and make decks. Like if we had a Cardfight Vanguard version of Master Duel, everybody would play it. I would absolutely play it every fucking day. Moving on. But turns out she's actually a really good player. We actually see her playing Gandiva, and she wins with it. And she's kind of a goof, which we didn't really get that impression of her when we saw her in the first episode. She's usually pretty uptight. But we actually see that she's not just good, she's really good. She actually shows the leaderboards, and she's at the top of the leaderboards for this online game. The last thing we see as it moves to the next scene is we actually see her Faded One card. She has the Faded One of Ever Changing Chrysaorine, which we'll get into what that is and what that does as we get into the gameplay. But we see her going through her routine during the day, and it turns out that not only did she get a lot of people, she left idols because of the pressure, and she wanted to focus on her studies, but it turns out she was actually being cyberbullied, so it was actually kind of sad. She gets a message from one of her friends. She was supposed to meet a friend IRL to actually build a physical deck because she wanted to start playing the card game for real. The friend said she couldn't make it, but she sent her brother to help her out. So they meet. She goes to a card shop, and it turns out that the friend is Akina, and the person she was talking to was Akina's little sister. So it was cute how they did that. At first, she freaks out because she knows who he is. It turns out she was actually there watching his match when he went against the Vanguard Divinez player. Now, all the other Faded ones were watching it, and she was there too. And she freaks out because she spits on him, tries to wipe it off, and she drops her Faded One card, and he realizes it. And rather than treating her like an enemy, he's just like, "Cool, we're both in the Faded Clash. This is awesome." But he introduces her to the owner of the card shop, which turns out it's Megumi from the Overdressed and Will-Dressed series. It turns out she grew up and now owns her own card shop. He kind of goes off to look at cards, and Megumi decides to help her build a deck, and she gives a whole deck list. Now, I thought this deck list was weird. Mind you, I can't read Japanese, but I saw the ratios, and as you see, there's a lot of 1 and 2 ofs, and why that is actually gets explained when we actually get into the gameplay. But after she builds her deck, Megumi basically asks her if she wants to test it, and she ends up playing against Megumi. So, we're going to jump into this game now. So this is a Stoatia versus Lyrical. Really cool. The only thing I'm going to say about this game and the next one we're going to cover, assume that at the beginning of their turn, everybody draws a card and energy charges 3, because they don't actually show it every time, but they end up using the resources, and obviously they're going to draw a card every turn. So I'm going to just, after their initial, get their energy gauge, I'm not going to be saying it at the beginning of every turn. But first turn is Makoto. She goes first, and she rides Lively Navy Typhine. I'm sorry, these names are ridiculous. I'm going to butcher them. Bear with me. But she rides grade 1. She sets her energy generator, and she passes the turn. Megami rides. She actually has a new ride line. She rides Sylvan Horn Beast of Blossoming Flowers Cheris, which is a new version of the original grade 1 from the trial deck. She sets her energy gauge. She does draw a card. She energy charges 3, and then she attacks with her grade 1. That's the end of her turn. Damage is 1 to 0. Round 2, Mikoto rides Confident Aqua Musette. I hope I said that right. She uses the grade 1 skill. She checks the top card of her deck and she calls it. It's Inez, which is a really, really good card. She attacks with her Vanguard. Megami doesn't guard it. She doesn't reveal a trigger. Megami's damage is not a trigger. Moving on. She attacks with the rear guard. Megami does guard the rear guard. Now the damage is 1-1. It's back to Megami's turn. Megami rides a new grade 2, Sylvan Horn Beast of Mercy, Latisse. She ends up using the grade 1 Cherish skill to check the top 3, and she calls this one. I'm definitely gonna mess up. Ginosla. This card's actually out now, and I still never been able to pronounce it. But she ends up calling it out. She attacks with her Vanguard. Mikoto doesn't guard. No triggers on either side. She attacks with Ginosla. Mikoto ends up guarding it. So now the damage is 2-1. We're going into round 3, and now it's Mikoto rides Faded One of Ever-Changing Chris Rain. With her grade 2 skill, she again calls the top card of her deck. She calls an Albina from the top of her deck. She ends up calling a Faustina and a Yukia from hand. She activates Chris Rain's first skill. So, this card's actually been revealed already to us, so I can actually give you guys the proper effect. So this card's effect is Counterblast 1 and activate 1 of 3 effects. If you have 4 units on the board with different names, you have to activate 2, and if you have 5 units on the board with different names, you have to activate all 3. At this point, she has 5 units, they're all different names. So she gets to activate all 3 effects. The first one, she gets to draw a card and energy charge 3. That's already pretty good. She gets to give any unit on her board 15,000 power, she ends up giving it to the Vanguard. And then she also gets to increase the Vanguard's crit by 1. So 15,000 power, extra crit, draw, and energy charge 3. Solid skill. She attacks with Chris Rain. Megami uses a perfect card, obviously, to guard the critical. Mikoto's second check is a critical. She ends up giving the critical and the power to Faustina. She attacks with Inez. Megami does guard this, and then she bounces the Inez back to hand with the Yukia skill, because she had Yukia boosting Inez. Lastly, she attacks with the Faustina that has the critical. Megami takes it. She takes the 2 damage. The damage is now 2-3. Now we're going into Megami's turn. And now, this is Megami's big turn. Megami rides Magnolia. Using her new Latrice skill, she adds Magnolia Elder from the drop zone to her hand. Magnolia, the new Latisse adds either a grade 3 or higher. She then Energy Blast 7, draws an extra card. She calls a card called Friendship Fairy. I believe this card's in the game right now. I've actually never played against it. Basically, it allows her to move it to soul and immediately ride into Magnolia Elder, which is cool. Using Magnolia Elder's skill, tongue twister, she calls Latisse from the soul to the back row center. But then she calls Sylvan Horn Beast Banaspati. This is a new card, another new card that they is coming out for Magnolia. It allows her to call, for every 2 grades that her Vanguard is, she gets to call a unit from the drop zone. That's grade 3 or lower, I believe it was. But since she has a grade 4, she gets to call 2 units. She calls Alpine and Inlet Pulse. She calls them to the open rearguard circles in the back row, and then she actually swaps Ginosla with Alpina, putting Alpina in the front row. Megami starts off her attacks. She attacks with Magnolia Elder first. Mikoto actually guards for a 3 to pass, which I thought was interesting. Megami's first check, she doesn't get anything. Second check, she gets a heal trigger. She heals 1 and gives the power to Ginosla. Then the third check is a critical, which she gives the power to Inlet Pulse, but she gives the critical to Latisse. This was a little weird, but she immediately shows why she did it. She then attacks with Ginosla. Its effect, when it attacks, you get to give its power to another unit. So she ends up giving the power to Latisse. That's why she powered up the Ginosla with the heal trigger, but then the power from the critical she gave to Inlet Pulse, so she has another big attack. Though she probably could have gave all the power to that one, and then that's neither here nor there. Moving on. Mikoto takes the Ganosla attack. Then she attacks with Banaspati. Mikoto does guard this with 2 cards from hand and then intercepts. Inlet Pulse attacks. She takes the damage. Latisse attacks with the critical. Mikoto perfect guards. And then lastly is the Alpina, which Mikoto also takes. Now the damage is flipped, and now the game looks crazy because now it's 5-2. But now we're going into the final turn. So Mikoto Persona rides. She calls the NS from hand that she had bounced back. She saved it and uses its skill to check top 5, and she calls Weezmei. She uses Chris Rain's skill because now she again has a board of 5 differently named units. So she draws, she energy charges, gains power, gains critical. Then she actually calls a heal from her hand behind the Vanguard. She attacks with Inez first. Inez has an effect to gain 10,000 power. Megami guards it. She then attacks with Weezmei. Weezmei has a skill to gain 15,000 power. Megami doesn't guard it, so now Megami's at 3. Mikoto attacks with Chris Rain. Megami guards it, dumping a bunch of cards, and Mikoto gets a critical on her twin drive, and she adds it to the Vanguard. Now Megami kind of bugs out here. She's like, why'd you do that? This attack's still not going through. But then we actually get to see Chris Rain's Divine skill. So Chris Rain's Divine skill bounces all of her Ray Guards back to hand, and then lets her call 1 unit. And its power and critical become equal to whatever the Vanguard was. So she calls Weezmei back out, and now Weezmei matches the critical and power of the Vanguard, which was like 58 for 3 at the time. And then she attacks with the Weezmei, activating the Weezmei's effect to gain another 15,000. And Megami just couldn't guard it, so Megami had to take 3 damage in one shot. So that's how Mikoto won that one. So she celebrates, she's having fun hanging out with Akina and all that. We get this little scene with the faded one of Zero is actually with Akina's friend that you see him throughout the episodes. He kind of just looks depressed, but it turns out he doesn't even care about the faded clash. He's just doing it because fate chose him and literally no other reason. But the last thing we see of the episode is that the next round of the faded clash is up. It's the faded one of Ever Changing versus the faded one of Guiding Stars. So it's Mikoto versus Taizo from Overdress. So that's how the episode ends, and now we're going to jump right into episode 5. Thankfully, episode 5 was really, really short as far as like leading up into the fight. Basically, it starts off with Akina and Mikoto hanging out on a roof. Then Akina convinces her to go meet his sister. They go to the hospital, and this kind of bugged me out because they go to see his sister, and Taizo's already there. I don't know how I'd feel about a grown-ass man in my little sister's hospital room. Like, he's not family, but he's just there. And I guess he did it to see Akina. I don't know. He ends up leaving after giving her some pudding. Maybe they know each other because she's a fan. Maybe she's part of his fan club. I don't know, because he is a professional card fighter in this universe. I just thought it was weird. But after their little altercation, Mikoto hangs out with Ikari for a little bit, and then we fast forward to that evening. Mikoto has a new outfit on, and she goes and gets ready to fight Taizo. And of course, now and Akina are there to watch the fight. And fight kicks off real strong. Mikoto starts. She rides her grade 1 from the last match, sets her energy generator, passes to Taizo. Now, while the last game was a big emphasis on Mikoto's cards, because a lot of them were new, and a few of Megami's, this one focuses a lot on Taizo's cards because he goes ham in this match. They kind of both do, but you'll see what I mean. Taizo rides Blitz Best Programmer Strasser. He draws off the starter skill, sets his energy charges 3, attacks with Strasser. Mikoto doesn't guard. Neither one of them gets triggers. Damage is now 1-0. Next round, Mikoto rides Musette, calls Faustina with the grade 1 skill off the top of the deck, calls a Yukiya behind it, and then attacks with Musette. Taizo doesn't guard. Again, neither one of them get triggers. Games slowly pick up the pace. She attacks with the Faustina. Taizo does guard that, and then she uses Yukiya's skill to bounce back the Faustina. So now the damage is 1-1. Taizo rides Blitz Head Researcher Uber. Try saying that 10 times fast. He uses the grade 1 skill, which lets him add a product card from his deck to his hand, which I thought was dope. He actually adds Assault Flight Carrier, I'm going to butcher this name, Lubzal. to his hand, and then he sets it. Because he set it, he kind of blasts one. He calls Combine Rush from the drop. He attacks with Uber, uses Uber's skill, which is, I believe, an Energy Blast to operate a product card. He operates the carrier, which allows him to draw an additional card. Mikoto doesn't guard. Neither one of them gets triggers. He then attacks with Combine Rusher. She blocks the Combine Rusher. So now the damage is 2-1. Now we're going into the grade 3 turns. This is where stuff gets crazy. So Mikoto, of course, rides Chris Rain. With Musette's skill, off the top of the deck, she calls a Weezme. She calls a Faustina and a Lean from hand, and then she uses Chris Rain's skill because now she has 5 units of different names. She Energy Blasts 7 to draw a card. She attacks with Weezme, Taizo doesn't guard. She attacks with Chris Rain, Taizo does guard. But she does get a heal trigger. She heals 1 damage, gives the power to Faustina. Faustina attacks, Taizo doesn't guard. She then bounces the Faustina back with the Yukio. Easy grade 3 turn. She did some damage, burned some cards out of his hand, but now the damage is 2-3. Now Taizo goes hand. Like, just look at all the text I wrote down for this turn. It's a lot. So we're gonna break it down. So Taizo rides his faded one of Guiding Star, Wallestra, Blitz Arms. Using Uber's skill on ride, it's a discard 1 to add 2 products from the deck. He adds Mobile Fortress of Obliteration. I am not going to pronounce it. I'm just going to call it Maximum from here on because I cannot. Freyschultz, I think that's how you say it. And he also adds the new one, which is Extreme Satellite Weaponry Uranthi. That one I'm pretty sure I said right. He adds them both to hand, and then he activates Blitz Arms Divine Skill, letting him automatically set both of them and operate one of them. So he operates the Maximum. So when Maximum's operated, it lets him retire a rear guard. He retires the Weezme, and he gets to take 5,000 power away from the Vanguard. Then Uranthi has an effect when it's set, allowing him to draw an Energy Charge 3. Then Taizo Energy Blast 7 to draw an additional card. So that was a pretty cool combo. He then calls Taurus and 2 Boba Mines. This one was actually kind of funny because the subtitles actually had a mistranslation calling it like tools or tolls. But he ends up calling these 3 units out, and then he goes on the offensive. He attacks with Torres, it gains 5k, and it allows him to operate Maximum again. So he is able to retire another rear guard and take another 5,000 power away. This time he retires Yukia, and unfortunately Mikoto does guard, but she has to dump 3 cards to guard it. Taizo countercharges with the effective Boba Main, move it to soul, countercharge 1. He then attacks with his Vanguard. His Vanguard gains 10k and operates a product again. So he operates Maximum again, retiring her Aline and taking another 5,000 power from Chris Rain. So now Chris Rain is literally at -2 because you can go negative in this game, which is silly to me. He then bounces the Taurus back to hand and actually calls the Maximum as a unit. That's actually one of the skills on Maximum. It's a 23k unit. Mikoto doesn't guard the Vanguard, and Taizo gets a heal trigger, recovering 1 damage and giving the power to Maximum. After that attack hits, it deals damage. He then attacks with Combine Rusher. Again, Mikoto doesn't guard, but this time she actually gets a critical. But this only puts her up to 8,000, and now she has to take an attack that has 33,000 power. So again, she takes that one too. Now the damage is 4 on her side, 2 on his. The Maximum goes back to the order zone, and the turn's over. Now going into round 4, this is usually where these card fights tend to end. And now it's Mikoto's turn. Mikoto Persona rides. She calls the NS from her hand that she had bounced last turn. I apologize. I had made a mistake. Looking at my notes again, back on turn 3, I said that she had bounced Faustina to hand. She had bounced Inez to hand. Faustina was on the other side. That was my mistake. She ends up calling the Inez out, which lets her check top 5 and call a card. She calls a perfect card. She then calls an Albina, and I'm going to butcher this one, a Recuse from hand, which gives her Vanguard 10k. She activates Chris Rain's skill, and then she also calls a Weezme. She attacks with Weezme. Taizo doesn't guard. She attacks with Inez. Taizo doesn't guard, so now he's at 4. She attacks with Chris Rain. Taizo guards with 6 cards. And Mikoto gets a critical, giving it to the Vanguard. His guard is 73. She ends up only at 71. But she did it because she's planning on using the Divine skill, which she then uses, bouncing all the cards back to her hand, including that perfect guard that she called off the top. She calls Inez out, making its powers and critical equal to the Vanguard's. So now it's 58 for 3. And then Inez skill checks top 5 and calls out another Faustina. She attacks the Combine Rusher with Faustina, and then she attacks the Vanguard with Inez. And Taizo had actually saved a perfect card. He had 2 cards in hand, and one of them was a perfect card. So now her turn's over, and it's 4-4. At this point, she's looking really, really good. She has a perfect card in hand, at least a critical in hand, and she's got like 6 cards in hand. But this is the final turn of the game. So Taizo doesn't Persona Ride or anything like that. He just calls out the Taurs that he had saved and a critical trigger in front of the Boba Mine that he had left from last turn. And he just attacks with the Vanguard. And on attack, he activates the Vanguard skill, gaining 10k and operating Urianthe that he didn't operate last turn. So when Urianthe's operated, it takes 10,000 power away from the Vanguard. It retires a rear guard, so he retires a Ness, and it forcibly deals a damage. So she goes to 5 and didn't get a trigger. So now she's stuck at 3k to deal with at least 3 attacks. 4, because I'm pretty sure maximum could still call itself out. And she looks at her hand, and literally, besides the perfect guard and the 1 trigger, it's all 5ks and grade 3s. And she ends up taking the damage, and she loses. It was a really, really good match. Last thing that happens, but right after the match is done, they all get a message. The next match is Faded One of Miracles versus Faded One of Guiding Star. So it's our boy Akina versus Taizo, and it's honestly going to be a good game. One thing I really like that they did with the second, especially with the second game, and you guys saw it through the pictures throughout the match, is that a lot of times they would show us the whole board, allowing us to see what both players are playing with, and it really helped with us with breaking down these matches. So good on you, Bushy. We get one final scene where it turns out Taizo's working with this masked person that's been trying to get everybody to quit, and he basically says he has to beat Akina. So there's, I guess, a little bit of tension there. But then the episode ends. So my thoughts on these episodes. First off, I really got to say thank you to Bushy. I'm really enjoying this style that they're doing, where they're focusing more on the card game and less on the story. Like, don't get me wrong, I like the characters, I like some of the story, but we're here for the card game. We're here for the reveals. We're here for the crazy games. And between actually showing us effects, calculating big powers, like, they're actually doing a really, really good job with the card fights in this series. These matches again didn't have any over triggers, and I'm okay with it. You guys know I've made it very clear that I don't like over triggers. But let me know what you guys thought of these episodes. Let me know if you guys enjoyed the review, if you guys want me to keep on going. If I do more reviews in the future, I'm going to do one episode at a time, because trying to squeeze all of this into one episode has been a little tough. And there's some stuff I would like to go into more detail with the breakdown, and I can't do that when I'm trying to squeeze all this information into one video, so you guys aren't here forever. Also, I know a little bit of Brancate. I don't know anything about Lyrical, but if you guys want to see me use these 2 Faded One cards, I would work on a deck for you guys, and I would get those videos out, but you gotta let me know down in the comments. Anyway, guys, again, thanks for all your support. If you guys want to check me out on social media, those links will be down below. That's it for me. I'll catch you guys on next video. Later.